let's start. It's great to have Ksenija Magda with us today. I have actually slept in the Magda's flat, and I had a host by the name Toma Magda, and husband of Ksenija. Great host, but she was missing. She was actually traveling for her role as the president of the women's team of the World Federation of World Baptist Federation, and I think you were in South Africa at the time being. By the way,
yeah, that's possible.
Your background looks really intriguing. Where are you?
I am at the campsite at the island of Ugljan. It's just a Baptist campsite. We are conducting a training in what we call vicarious traumatization, basically. We call it helping helpers. So for pastors and other helping professionals who are Christians to try and come to terms with their calling, you know. Started out as a post-war, but now now it's more geared towards the daily life and counseling.
You are teaching at the Zagreb University of Theology, and you have a PhD in from the London School of Theology. It was about Romans. Where you worked on. You have a theology of mission and mission and theology. You have that as your subject. How does that match up with what you're doing right now?
I think it matches up perfectly. At one time, I was thinking that I'm doing these sporadic things all over the place and didn't see how they come together. Like I was pursuing my doctorate in Romans on Paul's territoriality and mission strategy on the one hand side. I was working with women on all different levels. I was teaching students. I was writing stuff in New Testament theology and in missions theology, dealing with women's issues and with violence against women and all these things. And I thought, you know, it was popular to see how do you see yourself? Where are you going? And I thought I have no idea. I'm glad that God had an idea, because when I was called to be the president of the Baptist World Alliance Women's Organization, and when I started preparing for the role, I saw how all these things came together into a mission.
And you also have a family. You have, I think, 3 girls.
Yes.
As far as I know.
We have 3 daughters and 1 son.
And 1 son.
Yeah, and we have now 3 grandsons and another one coming this next month. And then also we're expecting one in November. We don't know yet whether that's going to be a girl or not.
Wonderful. Good mixture, by the way. I have also 3 girls and 1 son.
Yeah, well, 1 son has been quite enough, I can tell you. Yes, he lives in San Antonio in the States. We have a daughter who lives in Didcot and in Great Britain, and then the rest of us are living in Croatia. We never thought that any of us is going to live abroad, but that's how life is.
When your husband told me about the book you're writing, Blessing the Curse, I was very intrigued, very interested in the book, and I actually got to read the book before it was published during lockdown last year, and was able to write a little promotion for it. What I especially liked was this thought that it is about the original sin of men trying to dominate over another, and and that you built actually the book around this, that it is basically a power game. So tell us more about this power game between men and women, and how women often get the short straw.
See, when you come to our place and stay at our place, we make you pay. So you have to write a book review. Yeah, when you say it is about the sin of men, it's a complicated thing, because it says, oh, there is a woman writing against men. But I think at the core of people, both men and women, there is this tendency to become God. If we don't accept God in our life as the final authority, as God. The problem, when we wipe away God, then you have so many people who want to be in that position. So to me, that is fairly logical that hierarchies built, and I've been looking at those hierarchies, and it's not a very new concept, but we want to bless the hierarchies because they seem so natural to who we are as people, that we can't accept and can't see how the world could function in a different way. So hierarchies built on power structures. So I want to dominate you. If I dominate you, you won't dominate me. I am afraid of your leadership or your domination. You will destroy me. You will take away what I have. So if you look at those structures, it's basically trying to govern others, try to be on top of others, and that is something that is for people. The problem with women, I mean, I have started to write this book actually as a little giveaway at the end of my 5-year commission to this post as president, to try to explain to women that they should stand up to these kind of structures. So, can you see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay,
just
good.
keep going.
Something was going wrong here. So I was actually trying to encourage them, to empower them to stand up to these structures. It's not, I have to say, it's not standing up to men as much as standing up to the structures, which I call the structures or hierarchies of sin, especially in the church. I can understand that everything in the world is set up in the structures, because when you remove God from the picture, this is what gives you stability. This is at least some kind of stability, some basic status quo, which then helps us not to kill ourselves totally and annihilate ourselves. But the women are interesting in this equation, because as women, women have this biological disadvantage that they carry children. They cannot fight as men fight for positions. So what women have developed mostly and to a big degree is to marry into hierarchies. So they, in some ways, if you want it, and there I see like the seed of human trafficking is that women sell themselves, or their mothers, their parents sell them into this position, hopefully to, well, always with the best of intentions, you know, to help them be on a higher level, because if you're on a higher level, your life is going to be easier. I find it extremely difficult to see that you know, hierarchies, when they're set up like this, they tend to disqualify people from even fighting for positions, which happens usually to those people who are weaker. So the biological defect, if you so want, of women who are able to bear children, it is disqualifies them. So they are then you know, relegated to motherhood and defined just only through that particular role. So all the rest in their life is just disappears, and they can maybe have little bits of it on the side somewhere if they can steal a little bit of something from the others. That, of course, is very dissatisfying on the long run. I mean, you can be a mother and you're expected to be a mother for only such an amount of time. In the current situation, well, I think it's probably about 1/3 to 1/4 of your life that you that you can be a parent, a mother, and all the rest basically is you're trying to find how you can define yourself, which is usually a life in codependency, so trying to live through your husband and your children, and for some reason these people don't appreciate it so much when they are on their way to become somebody. So I see there is a big problem with that. Women need to understand themselves more inclusively. And then how there's the other position, of course, is we have now in the age of emancipation, strong women who want to fight on the same kinds of presuppositions as men. But that's not appreciated because their role is differently defined. So somehow they are left without, I mean, they have to forget that they're women, and usually they are described as dragons and far worse than any kind of man could be. Usually, if you have, you know, women on executive positions, this is what the general public opinion is. So in my book, well, if you see it in the world, that's okay. I think the problem becomes really difficult when it's in the church, because from my mission perspective, we need everybody on board to be effective as the church. If we just disregard or say, well, you're just only good for this role, we are neglecting the gifts that God has given, and some of these gifts are very substantial. We have half of the army, or even more in the churches, who are not fighting, and really dreadful things happen there. Not to say that the hierarchies of sin have their own ways to function. You know, the fights that are going on. Yesterday, I've read in the papers that Canadian Indians have put on fire some Catholic churches in some areas of the reserve because they found graves of little children. You know, people, when they assume the position of God, they become very ruthless. Everything goes. They make the decisions. They excuse stuff. Just think about the whole issue with Ravi Zacharias, or with the Church 2 movement. really a lot of bad things are happening. This goes against our testimony. We can tell people the gospel as much as we want and proclaim it, but if we're not living it, there's nothing to be seen. So my suggestion in this book is to try and see what really the Bible, the New Testament says about this relationship of men and women primarily, but it's actually a relationship of all who are delegated to the bottom of the hierarchy and those on top. To assume what Jesus has taught us, to be servants rather than rulers of others. And this is something that we are not very good at on the global scale. There's some very encouraging, of course, there's some very encouraging examples throughout the world, and I have found them in any kind of culture, regardless of how civilized we think a culture is from the Western point of and perspective. So that is what gives us hope and gives us life, I think, but we need to become more proactive in experiencing and letting go of those hierarchies, because the hierarchies only perpetuate themselves. The hierarchies look at things from their own perspective. They never really are open to see what's going on in the world. And this is not just me talking. These are now in the corporate world. You have research that has shown this, and in the West we have attempts to go away. So the world is trying to find ways, but we insist on the hierarchies and we actually bless them, where I think we should thoroughly rethink them and actually destroy them to find the freedom and to become the testimony that God wants us to be.
Thank you very much, Ksenija. This is very challenging, very revealing. The evangelical line prides itself to build on unity, the unity which Jesus has called us to in John 17, and unity being displayed in love and appreciation of each other, which is mission in itself, as Jesus says.
They will know us by our love, not by our doctrine. That's really problematic here.
If you find yourself in the leadership of a church which does not include women, as you described it to us, and you would want to start changing this, where would you start? And by the way, others questions are open from now on. You may also type them or just come in.
Well, that's very easy for me now, coming from a perspective of the Baptist World Alliance president, the top of the hierarchy. The real change really happens in the grassroots. So it's actually working in your local church with the people who are disregarded, to strengthen them, to show them the way at which to show them, to try to give them the opportunity to find their calling, because these people have been heavily under pressure. Just all of their gifting has disappeared. And yes, I'm trying now that I'm not the president anymore. I am just actually trying to work with people who I found very annoying before, because I think if they're annoying, there's something going on that I want to see. Working with marginalized people, very interesting thing that I learned in Africa. A brother said, I really love when I see you women come together like this. Was a conference. He says, because when you come together like this, I know that the devil has had his head crushed. So as much as we see that as much as we think that change comes from above, I think change always comes from below. Real change comes from below. From above, you can order things, but people will always find a way how to get out of it. But if you strengthen people from below, and I really think that the change has to come from the women themselves in some ways. That doesn't mean that that men should not be involved in the process. That would make it a lot easier. But I think encouraging and enabling women is probably the first step.
Are there other questions? Just open the microphone and talk. I have another one. I noticed that, for instance, in the Dalit movement in India, there is a real empowerment of women, and there are many women pastors, and really women play their part as men do. Have you heard of other movements around the world where this happens?
It's sometimes a double-edged sword, because yes, there are places where women and men seem to have the same kind of power, so to say. I don't know if that's the right word, but anyway, so we ordain women, we do that. I had an experience like this in the Bahamas, for instance. There you have women pastors, women who lead churches as well. But when we had the big celebration of the Bahamian organization and church, there was no women pastor on the podium. So in areas where being where it's very difficult to work, you will have women who are allowed to do things that they would normally not be allowed to do, because it does not give you special, you're not getting paid. Most of these women don't get paid. You're not getting any glory for it. You're just pushed into this role. Well, as women, we tend to get into this because we believe it's worthwhile. So the cause makes us go there and sort it out and work there. So so I think when we are looking at those places, we should be also looking at this kind of thing. Sometimes you get a woman onto a board, and then the board is very happy with themselves because they have now a woman, and then for the next 20 years there's no woman because we have had a woman, and it's called moral licensing. So so we have to be very careful when we see things like that. But it does say one thing. It does say one thing, and that is that God calls women and uses them. It's only that sometimes we don't adequately follow on, help them, support them, because they're just women doing their stuff. This is changing now. I know, for instance, about the Baptist World Aid in Australia, which is interesting. They have switched, it seems, totally to involving women in their mission, because they've found that when women come from a vision trip, they will call on the community. They will stay with something until it's done, not just say, okay, I've seen this, we'll send some cash over there, probably into the structures, that never come to the layers of the poor women that do the work, and that's it. The women will stay with the project. They will follow up on it, because it's a community. Not that there are not men like this. Again, it's not all black and white, and especially when we are in the Christian domain, there are, of course, brothers who do a great job involving everybody regardless of their gifts. But I'm talking to the majority, to the church in general, where this is not just one, we should not have like sporadic points where this is the case. We should have the majority with sporadic glitches.
Mm-hmm. Are there other questions? Can't believe that there would be questions in such a topic.
Everybody either agrees or disagrees heavily.
It looks like.
Ksenija,
Yep.
I was interested in your statement that change always is provoked from below and not from above.
Yeah.
Clearly, where there is resistance, then it's often pressure from below which has to unlock the status quo. But I've always thought of it in terms of there needs to be both. Because of my personal experience, the example that stands out for me is the organisation in the UK, Home for Good, which was initiated. There was a great hunger on the ground, as it were, for change to take place, but it took national leaders to bring it onto the agenda, and then you were to influence the church, both from within as members and from national leadership, giving permission, as it were, to the local leadership to hear what was being said. So I see it as a marriage of both. So I was interested to hear you say from the bottom, from below.
Yeah, I think it's a big. I'm really sorry that it takes that you have to find so many people to do the right thing before the leadership on top says, okay, we'll give you a hearing. That is something indicative, as I see it, because that says the leadership on top is not really living with the majority at the bottom. And that for me is something that should not be in the church, because Jesus says whoever wants to be the greatest has to serve. So when you're serving, you can't be on the top giving permission. You are among the people. I'm not speaking against structures, because the Holy Spirit makes structure. One sentence stayed with me from Miroslav Wolf's class in systematic theology. He taught us then that the church is a charismatically structured eschatological community. which means it is structured, but it's structured by the gifts that the Spirit is giving and not by positions of power. That the Holy Spirit leads this whole thing, and that's why it's so fluid. It's not a self-perpetuating hierarchy of positions. This tends so to narrow the whole our whole business of church. And then also, and that stayed with me, it's an eschatological community, which means the world should look at us and see, oh, this is great. We would like to be like that. But instead, we have this situation which really bothers me and worries me and saddens me, that the world is looking at us and says, we cannot believe. There's nothing to be learned from you. And I'm burdened by this. I see so many women who are just who are abandoning the church, and nobody even asks. Even here, nobody even asks why aren't they coming anymore? We just let them go, and the best of our people are going because they can't take it anymore. Is it a problem? Whose problem is it? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's a burden on my heart, and sometimes I come across as very strong and decisive, but it seems to me that this is a big request. This is a big challenge that we're standing at. And we need to do something thorough in this.
Damir, I'm dropping on you because you are actually the only General Secretary which attends today. Apparently the others have all solved this problem or are avoiding it. Or this problem, this question. It's not the problem, it's a question. How do you, Julia asked this question, how do you handle differences between your members?
That's to Damir.
Yeah, to Damir.
I have to unmute first of all. Yeah, what Ksenija is sharing, that's really challenging, and I'm wondering also how to react in a way to find good answers for our context. How to redefine hierarchies, how to be what she quoted Miroslav Volf, our good friend, and at this point I must say I don't have any formed reaction. It's just provocations and challenges that are good, that are needed, that they are needed for sure, and definitely it would be good to build on this with some good maybe books that might be suggested by Ksenija or any one of you, because I don't have full answer, and I'm just thinking while Ksenija is teaching us and speaking, and it opens some other questions in a very practical way, how to connect grassroots and even us that are in hierarchies and want to do good, want to open door for Holy Spirit to reshape us and to remodel us wherever we need to do that. And there are definitely so many areas that we need reshaping and maybe redefinition.
There is always, thank you, Damir, there's always the question of quota. have you may have had experiences with a quota of women being also as an on the board or on the eldership, and kind of breaking this? I'm asking this because we are often asked at European level by certain countries why you don't have more women on the board. But if it doesn't happen on the national boards, it's very hard to make it happen on the European board. So this is a challenge.
Yeah,
This is the challenge of hierarchy.
Yeah,
yeah,
if I may add, just I was fighting in recent years, maybe 6-7 years, to have even more than one woman in our, let's say, executive presbytery, a national leadership of our denomination. And there was all kind of resistance from time to time. And somehow it was not easy to, I mean, I was strong enough to persist and to persuade some of them that we need the voice and help of, I mean, majority of our members are sisters, and they need to have their voice. They need to have a way how to even help us. And for us men, that was very good quality in so many times when we heard their opinion, their wisdom. And but it's not easy. The resistance is very often very strong, sometimes theological, sometimes practical, sometimes some other ways.
It's very difficult to get women into the structures because they are excluded at the low level, and then they cannot be promoted further, even to such a degree that they are disabled systematically, actually. And the maid believe that they cannot do this, that this is incompatible with their role that they are to play in the church and even in the family, and then of course our theological reasoning that is sometimes not really theological or biblical, as we like to call it, but something that we have adopted from our culture and history, that actually disable women from even being considered. And then there are blind spots. I mean, it's a very complex problem, and so I think it needs really a change of environment. So where do you start? Again, I think it all starts somewhere in the grassroots where we talk about these things. I mean, there are many books out there, but most people will not read those books. Academics will read them, and academic citizens, but the majority church is not prone to reading such material. So we have to find ways to teach them from where they come, from where they are. And it usually happens through relationships. So I am really thinking about how this change could happen. And I think probably the start is also with the hierarchies to see how we can serve rather than rule. Are we serving everybody? Can we co-opt somebody into this board to give us a different opinion, to make us aware of what's going on, and things like that could be maybe a start.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Please.
How do you consider the influence of the society at large on the church? in leadership terms. I'm from a typical secular Western country, Netherlands, and I see they still have in politics. They also have this problem that there are no female leadership leaders, and despite trying very hard. So I wonder, how do you consider the influence of society on the church?
The influence of society on the church has always been big, enormous. I think it has become even more in today's world. The one thing that became really interesting for me to observe in the pandemic lockdowns, people have learned. I mean, people before have been consulting the internet and feeding off the internet and so on. And there is absolutely no chance for us in the churches to be able to control what they are eating, you know, and what they are bringing into the church. So for me, see that is also one problem of the structures, so to say, the hierarchical structures, because they rely on controlling. And we are moving into a place now where there is virtually no control. So we have to learn how to live with that. For me, what has come into our church a lot is this idea that the church is a business that needs to be run as a business. And I think that's really scary. I appreciate some of the movements that have given us some tools of leadership, but I think the idea was to get biblical tools into the world of business to make it more humane. But what seems to be happening is the other way around, that we have taken the business now and put them into the church. And it seems lately that we are, that we think that businessmen are much better prepared to lead a church than pastors and soul carers. So it is a very, it's a very difficult question. For me, it's not, I mean, the world operates by quotas and says we have to have so many women. This is, for me, that's not a solution necessarily on its own, but it's an incentive. It makes the worldly structure see, because the world has learned that you cannot really depend only on this triangle. You need to expand in order to get the best results, because if you're not getting best results, then you cannot keep your top position. And so the world has ideas how they kind of try to fix it. I think in the church, we should try to see more what we are importing from the society. And it seems to me that working with this simple idea from how the Bible describes the problem of the world, and how, for me, it was coming from Paul, you know, how Paul sees that the Bible describes the problem of the world. It seems to be a starting point. How are there any other possibilities and options? And it seems to me that the EEA is doing a good job by defining themselves as a dance floor. Of course, there are some people who manage this, you know, have to kind of, you know, create spaces and the thing. But people are invited to join in the dance. They may be moving in all different kinds, and we may be annoyed by some of the movement, you know, especially if we like the waltz. But I think that's a very good start for me. This is, I know I can imagine that this is very difficult to communicate across Europe, for instance. But I think that's a very worthwhile attempt to enlarging. Does that answer anything? I don't know.
Very helpful. Are there other
Because
questions? Suggestions?
I'm reminded of
The time.
this quote of William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, saying, "My best men are women." So it's a strategy from within our own circle that can really bring us forward.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Other questions, challenges, struggles, suggestions?
Well, there are more questions and challenges and struggles than solutions at this point, but maybe that's good. That's a good way by God telling us you need to look outside the box.
Well, quiet, just another opportunity. Thank you very much, Ksenija. This has
Thank you for having me.
Very helpful, very challenging, very thought-provoking. And I can tell you, if you haven't gotten the book from Ksenija, please get it, read it. I assume you are among the readers, and try to incorporate and live up to what Ksenija challenges us to do and to work on. I can say we have tried to model this in our late General Assembly, where we had, I think, an equal par of women and men participating and especially also presenting, and where we also tried to bring together generations, because that's another challenge which we have these days. All the people being pushed
also
out.
a hierarchical challenge.
Yeah, where we have tried to pull together people of different backgrounds, and so has been a good General Assembly. This is actually also has online, as this conversation will go online, and I've put the chat or something in the chat. If you have a problem with this, please let us know, so we don't put you online without you knowing, meaning we probably would have to cover up your spot. So I think as the hour is coming close, we will be closing here, unless there is yet the question, which doesn't seem to be the case. Thanks again, Ksenija. Greetings to Toma, and
I will.
have a wonderful time in this camp, a wonderful time of teaching and interacting. A great example, Toma told me about this, and if I would speak Croatian, I would consider coming there, but I don't. Yeah, you're a great example of doing what you're walking the talk. Thank you so much.
We try to. Yes, thank you all for coming in today.
And to the others, I hope you will be back on another Zoom call, Zoom Café. Probably many on holiday like me the next time. The next time will be again the last Wednesday of the month. I think we don't have the topic yet, but we'll find somebody who will speak, and so add another flower to our nice bouquet which we have had so far. So thank you, and may the Lord bless you, and have a wonderful summer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.